Alrighty. In this section, we're going to go over the exporter dialog for Gamebryo inside of 3D Studio Max. Okay, so we can export something by pressing this button, or we can just bring up the exporter dialog and adjust some of the settings with this button here. So the first thing that you notice is convert camera and lights, and this does just that. It'll either ignore the cameras and lights in the scene, or it'll export the cameras and lights in to the NIF file. In the case of, say, a whole scene where you've set up cameras and lights, you want to export them to the NIF file. In the scenario where you've got, say, a character and you've got him running around in a different scene, you probably don't want to export the lights or the cameras with the character. The second box here gives you the option of whether you want to include the textures that you've attached to your geometry inside of Max, whether you want to include those inside the NIF file so that it's just one nice atomic unit, or whether you want to leave those as separate images so that you can share those with other NIF files easier, or you can modify the images without having to re-export. That's, again, an option up to you. These are the two options I don't use very much, but you can save the textures out as separate NIF files, or you can set this here as to save them out as the original images, but when it loads them, to load them directly into the video card RAM. I usually just tend to stick with either original or inside the NIF. This little allow non-power of 2 textures is basically, it's for, I think it's the NVIDIA 6800 and above cards where they've started to allow you to not use non-power of 2, they've allowed you now to use non-power of 2 textures. The animation rollout I pretty much ignore as well, except for this last one here, the skin weight threshold. And this is for skinning. You can basically optimize the performance by bringing this number up a little bit. So say if it's at 5%, it's going to ignore any values of weights that are less than 5%. And again, that'll kind of optimize the amount of skinning partitions that are created. The main dialog box here that's important is this script selection. So this first part is the default process script, and this controls a lot of plugins that get run as the NIF file gets exported. And this second dialog here controls basically whether it embeds all the animation into the NIF file, which would be this default export script, or whether it takes those animations and extracts them into a KF file. And that's what these other ones are. And it's just simple options here where you can extract them to be multiple KF files, or you can extract all the animations into a single KF file. This button here is the profile, the mesh profile stuff, which is new in 2.5, but we've got different ways that we can compress meshes, basically. So you can set it up so that it has, say, NBT and UV compression, for example, when it exports the mesh. And this section here is basically what platform it exports for. So if you're exporting for PlayStation 3, you'd set it for PlayStation 3. Generic will work. We'll try and work on all platforms, but for your final export, you're going to want to export it specifically for that platform that it's exporting for or that it's going to run on, and that way it can be optimized to the best to run on that platform. The process scripts are quite involved. So there's a lot of plugins that can be run basically as you export. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do to the data. And so what we have over here on the left is the list of all of these plugins that can be run on the data. And what we have on the right is the list of things that are actually going to be run on the data. And this can be saved out as a script. And the nice thing about this is you can set this up. We can add a few plugins here, and then we can save this out as a new script. So we can give it a new name. Call it. We'll get really creative and call it script 2, and then we'll go ahead and add some plugins and save this script. Okay, so there's our script 2. So at that point, now you've got this script 2. If you're an art director, this can get passed out throughout the office to make sure that everybody is exporting everything with the same plugins running, and that helps to keep things coherent. Okay, we got to cut that laugh out. And okay, back to seriousness. Okay, so let's go over some of what these plugins are in this process script here. So we're going to hit edit again, and I'm just going to go over really quick what our default is. So our default process script, it's going and it's got this create ABVs, and that stands for alternate bounding volumes. So if you have any collision data that you want to set up and you've created ABVs, you'd want to run this plugin, and this will actually create the ABVs for you. This scene graph optimization is one plugin that's going to be run most all the time, and this basically is going to go through the entire scene graph and try and optimize things. So if we double click on this Chumpy right here, we'll get a whole bunch of options for this. And these are all just options to optimize the scene. And they're all pretty self-explanatory. You know, remove childless nodes. We'll look through and see if it's got any nodes that don't have any children. It'll try and optimize the scene by getting rid of those. This one will merge two nodes that are on the same hierarchy level that have, say, the same material. It'll try and merge them together. Yeah, no, this one will get rid of unnecessary normals or extra texture coordinate sets that don't have textures attached to them. So there's all sorts of optimization things that this plugin will do. It's a very important plugin. It makes things run faster. It also is the plugin that will usually mess things up. If you're trying to get something to run a specific way, something could be getting optimized out, and this could be the culprit, one of these check marks here. If you've got an object that's happening on, actually this little keep button right here will make sure that what you can do is select that particular object, click this button, and it will make sure that object does not go through this scene graph optimization plugin. This save source render texture data will basically, if you're exporting for a specific platform, will basically swizzle that texture in whatever specific way it needs to be read by that particular console. And mesh finalize has to do with the mesh profiles. Basically, it'll finalize that mesh to be the correct mesh profile. You always want to have the mesh finalize as the last thing in the plugins here. Some of the other ones that could be useful, there's animation analyzer. Some of these ones are just to basically give you information about the scene, and that's what the animation analyzer will do. There's also the skin analyzer, which does the same thing there. There's a lot of physics ones. If you're using physics, you'd want to add some of these. There's the fur generator. If you want to have something that has fur, obviously you want to add that plugin. So all of these plugins are explained more in depth in our documentation as well. This is just basically an overview of what some of the important ones are. Okay, and that's basically an overview of our export scene dialog.